Chapter 13. Friday late evening. After dinner, they cleaned up. Then Doreen recovered all the papers from the scanner and stuck them in the folder. Mac snagged the folder from her hand and said, "I made dinner, so you make coffee?" She raised her eyebrows, thinking about it before speaking. Fair deal. She put on coffee but watched as Mac sat outside and went through the folder. He appeared to be locked into reading the journalist's summary first. Maybe he'd make better sense out of the corporate things mentioned there. But maybe not. She focused on the coffee. When she returned, Mac intently read another set of summaries she hadn't seen. "Where'd you get those?" "In the folder," he said, distracted. She waited but realized there was no point. She might as well do the dishes. Not only had he cooked and showed her how to cook, but he had also done it multiple times now. So she did the dishes, and when the coffee was ready, she brought 2 cups outside. He was still distracted. Now she wondered what she'd missed. When he was done, he stared at her with a look she didn't recognize. She frowned at him. "What's the matter?" "Steve has been working for the Devil Riders," he said, his voice harsh. "And that is some seriously bad news." "The biker gang. I heard they were a big group in this town." "They're everywhere," Mac said. And it was one thing for him to work with the legitimate business side, but it was another thing to work with the other side. It appears Steve, in his corporate legal side, deals with them almost exclusively. At least according to the notes. "I didn't see that before," Doreen complained. "You were so busy making a copy of it and being afraid I might steal it," he said, cracking a smile, "that you didn't get time to read it." "True. So what does this mean?" "It could mean Steve disappears, whether willingly or not, or, if he is afraid that something like this folder comes out and he sticks around, he'll be facing bigger problems." "Is this like a mafia thing? Will the gang beat him up if this information gets out?" "Yes," Mac said. "As much as they've tried to legitimize the gang, there's still an offshoot where they believe they're above the law and can do what they want." "Are they still into drugs, sex trafficking, prostitution, and all that nasty stuff?" He looked at her. "You come across the darndest things." "I've done a lot of research on these old cases recently. Of course, I've come across all kinds of fascinating tidbits. I also knew this biker gang was an element here, but it never occurred to me how bad they were. I'm not sure it's a bad gang in that sense, but Steve's been working with them for a long time. They may not even be currently involved in anything we're concerned about, but Steve may know of something from their past. And if he's afraid you'll mess things up for him, that's a problem." She shuddered. "Him being their lawyer doesn't mean he's doing anything illegal, right?" "No, not at all, but depending on how much research is in here," he said, "the journalist may very well have uncovered some illegal activities." According to his summary, he suggested the gang was laundering money through their corporations, while buying and selling properties all around the province. "And so he's been using the corporation to help facilitate that?" "Yes." "And presumably," Doreen said, "they're laundering their own illegal money from drugs and prostitution?" "Exactly." He handed her the summary she had not read yet. She nodded and went through this summary, then put the pages inside, closed the folder, and shoved it toward him. "Then take him down," she said calmly. "And you're welcome." He stared at her. "It's not that easy." "I know. You'll tell me it's for a completely different department in the RCMP, won't you?" His lips twitched. "We do all work together. But yes, there are specialized crime divisions. So maybe don't handle this one all on your own," she said. "Instead, hand it off to the right people." "I would, except now you're threatening Steve with the police, and Steve has a lot of gang people he can call on to threaten you right back." She stared at him. As she slowly sagged into her chair, she said, "Oh. Chances are the journalist uncovered all kinds of crap, didn't he?" Yes, but if Solomon had any actual evidence pointing to a crime, he would have handed it to the police. Unless he was planning on writing a book and doing it that way. No, he still would have given it to the police. She didn't like the thought that came to her mind. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Mac looked at her curiously. "It's not like you to hold back on your theories," he said. "Granted, you're not so free to share facts with me." Just then, Thaddeus hopped up onto the table, walked over, and pecked on the folder. "Leave it alone," Doreen told the bird. "All kinds of nasty stuff are in there that once you open it." "Exactly what I would warn you about," Mac said. "If we continue our investigation this way, it could come back to the fact you are the one who had the folder. Which would put me out there as a target." He stared at her for a long moment. "What were you going to say?" She shook her head. "I've forgotten. I'm pretty sure it's more about Steve. And just being aware he could be dangerous." Mac abruptly stood and put the folder on the kitchen counter. "I want to look at the rest of these folders." She raced behind him. "You could ask first." He shot her a look, and she raised her hands in surrender. "I've never held anything back from you." At that, he spun on his heels and said, "What?" She held her hands higher. "Well, okay. I don't hold anything back from you for very long." He rolled his eyes and pulled out one of the pot chairs. "Why don't we lay the folders down so all the names on the labels are visible, and we take pictures?" Doreen asked. Mac nodded. "That's an excellent idea." So that was what they did. They took all the folders out of one box, then arranged them to see all the tabs of names without anything else to distract them, and took several pictures. "I almost want to run all of this through the scanner so we have it saved in a digital format too," Mac said. "I could do that, but it'll take me a couple days or so." "I know, and I hate to even ask you because I'm worried about somebody getting into your house and stealing these now. But I'm afraid you'd be faster at this than going through normal channels at work." "I know," Doreen said. "I could be sitting on a gold mine or a bomb, likely to blast off in my face. Maybe I should talk to the journalist myself." "You could try, but he's in a hospice. He had his great-nephew bring all these to me, so it wouldn't be part of the estate. And I don't know if other family members know the great-nephew did this." "Interesting. Makes sense to do this now before he dies," Mac said. "And then we may find out later that somebody's been waiting for Solomon to die to get their hands on this. I'll see if I get time, I might pass by. It's not a criminal manner to hand these off, and he's not likely to pass any vital information that isn't in the file given his health." "In that case," Doreen said, "I think I'll start scanning." While Mac put all the files back in the first box, she laid out all the folders from the second box and said, "Let's get all the labels down so we have photographs of what was here." Later, Doreen groaned when the photos of the files from the second box were finally done. "This alone takes a while," she said. "Let's just keep the process moving," Mac said, then paused. "Why don't I finish up taking photos of the files from these last two boxes? For now though, while you run all that through the scanner, do you want me to take a look at the stack of stuff in the garage?" She nodded. "I completely forgot about that. Tons of stuff is still there." She set up another folder with thankfully all normal-size papers into the scan tray and pushed the button before heading to the garage with him. He whistled when he saw the mound in the middle. "You know what? I knew you were doing this," he said, "but I hadn't realized how big a job it would end up being. A lot of this is just garbage though." "I agree, but I don't know how I'll get rid of it all. It's a lot to put out in the city garbage every week." Mac moved a bunch of stuff around. "Some of this we can recycle. The others we can probably take to charity. But old open bottles of shampoo? That's garbage." "Exactly. And again, I don't even know what I can recycle." Do you want to keep anything here? She shook her head. Maybe you see things you think are valuable or usable that I'm just not seeing. We can start by separating what gets recycled and what's garbage. Then we can take another look. Mac grabbed several bags and started tossing old shampoo bottles. Doreen smiled and headed back inside, setting the next stack of files to be scanned. Back and forth, back and forth. By the time they took a break, it was already 8 o'clock. Mac looked at the scanner and said, "I'm surprised it's not smoking by now." "Don't say that," Doreen groaned. "I don't have the money to replace it." "Did you work at my mother's place today?" Mac asked. "You normally go on Fridays, don't you?" "Normally, yes." She nodded. "But your mom had appointments and asked me to come tomorrow. And I was too tired to do much of anything today besides this spring cleaning effort." He shook his head. "That's fine. I just didn't know if I owed you for gardening or not." She wrinkled her nose. "No, but I'll do it tomorrow morning. I'm going over there to garden too, so if you want, we can be there at the same time, and I can pay you at the end of it." She brightened at that. "Perfect. Or I'll do the gardening for free if you can help me dispose of all this garbage. We'll see." When Doreen came back from scanning the second box, she saw almost everything resting against the edge of the garage door. "So was that all garbage?" "I'd say so," Max said with a nod. Then he pointed to a second pile equally as large. "We could do a charity run for those." "Where?" "There's a big one on Springfield. Other than that, various other places make money off your donations too." Doreen smiled. "I can probably fit everything here into my car. If I knew where to go, I could just drop it all off. I suggest the place in Rutland. You just pull up, open your vehicle, and they unload it for you. You don't get any money though, but you get rid of what you're taking there." She laughed. "You know what? I really like that idea." So they opened the garage door and loaded her car. Doreen smiled when it was all inside. "I wonder," she said, "if any of those plastic containers in our garbage pile could go to them. If so, I think we could get rid of a bunch more of this stuff." They worked the garbage pile down by another 1/3. With her car completely stuffed and only a few trash bags left, Max said, "Your garbage goes out on Monday. Then, if you fill it again after it's picked up, you can get rid of all these." Doreen smiled and grabbed several bags. Together they filled her garbage can until the lid wouldn't shut. Now only one bag was left. She smiled and said, "That was pretty easy." "Yeah. I'll take the last bag home." Then Mac picked it up and tossed it in front of the garage. "My can's empty. I have garbage I have to get out of the kitchen too. Maybe I'll give you a couple more bags, if you don't mind." Mac ended up with 3 more bags, which would make it possible for Doreen to get rid of her garbage all by Monday. He had also loaded several boxes filled with trash in his truck bed, specifically for a dump run. "I'll take these to the dump. When you are sure you want to get rid of the spare bedroom bed, I'll take that later too. Just let me know." Tired but euphoric, she smiled and opened her arms wide. "Thank you. I cannot believe we got that done." "I can't believe it either," Mac admitted. "You just have your living room floor to deal with now." She groaned. "The closet contents?" "Right. But it's only the closet. My house is cleaned out of everything but a few pieces of furniture. Not even much of that. We may have to get you some used furniture." "Maybe, but I don't know where to go for that either." "Some second-hand furniture stores are around," Max said. "I don't think that'll be a problem once you decide what you want. But live with what you've got for a while and see how you feel about it. Maybe you want to do some work on the house before you start filling it again with furniture. Even painting it would give the whole place a different look." Doreen nodded. You're right. At that, Mac headed off. Doreen walked back inside, knowing she had done half the scanning, but another whole half awaited her. She also had a carload of stuff to get rid of, gardening at Millicent's tomorrow, and the front closet stuff to sort. She didn't know how her day had disappeared so fast, but it had. She set the alarms, propped the kitchen chair up under the side door to the garage to stop anybody from coming in her house from that direction, and headed to bed. It had been another good day's work. But she was exhausted.